right. Go. All right. Hello and good evening. Welcome to another episode of our relationships series. This evening, we're going to be talking about forgiveness. Hot topic alert. So, thank you guys so much for joining in right on time. And we will, as usual, maintain our time and be sure to be present here within this conversation for about an hour. So, again, I welcome you all. I invite you to participate, throw your comments in the chat. For sure, if you'd like to speak out loud, raise your hand. And throw your mic on and say what you got to say because it's a conversation and we all can learn and benefit from each other's contributions. So, thank you so much again for being here. I am Genevieve, for those of you who do not know me. I'm a registered psychotherapist. I am now also a speaker, trainer, and coach. And I love all things relationships. My favorite topic is about relationships. I believe we were born for relationships, and everything rises and falls on relationships. If we do relationships well, we can have happy and fulfilling lives. And if we don't do relationships well, our lives are usually found wanting, and it's unsatisfying and unfulfilling on some level. Um, I love talking about the things, the parts, the components, the elements that make relationships very good, that make relationships healthy. And one of those such elements is forgiveness. And so we know that in relationships, we're going to get into positions where we disappoint one another, where we are disappointed as well as when we disappoint others. And so forgiveness is a part of how we reclaim or rebuild, repair the connection that has been broken at times when there is disappointment or hurt in the midst. So that's what we'll be talking about this evening. It is a hot topic. It can be touchy, and there will be some things that you might hear that may cause some some internal unrest. So if that does happen, I will challenge you to take a moment to find your space, ground yourself, do some breathing, and then re-enter or revisit the space, or take a break if you need to. Okay. All right, let's jump in. We have our regular overview. And so we'll be looking at definition of forgiveness. We'll look at some myths, some quotes, some stats. We'll talk about the art part, right? How to do this thing, get some practical tips on how to engage in forgiveness. Um, and then I'll challenge you guys as per usual. And then we'll see what's coming up next week is the final episode of season 2. Can't believe we're here already. Super and it's been very exciting and a lot of fun. So we'll look at what's coming up next week, and then we'll do some questions and some conversations afterwards as well. Okay. All righty. Hmm. Let me see what's happening here. I think my screen just froze. All right. Perfect. Okay. So this is for you if, and I just noted some things. So maybe you'll locate yourself in the midst. Maybe you'll find yourself on this list. But if it's hard for you to let go, then this is for you. And I've been here. I've definitely been here. And at times I'm still here, even though I've been practicing for intentionally for a good amount of time. It's hard sometimes to let go of what happens in life. Um, and sometimes we don't actually want to let go. We kind of want to hold on to it a little bit. So um, even if it's causing us pain or anger or frustration. So this is for you if you find it hard to let go like me. If you're angry a lot, if you do find yourself becoming really upset or staying irritated, aggravated, on edge, kind of snapping at people, lashing out at the kids, kicking the dog, that kind of thing. And it's due to holding on to things that others have done to you, then this is for you. If you want an apology from someone who may be dead at this point or who may be gone, meaning they're out of your life, and there's something about whatever they did to you that you want an apology for, this is definitely for you. Um, this is for you if you avoid certain people and places. So if you find yourself not going, to that particular store or neighborhood or event because you think you're going to see that person, you're going to cross paths with that person, and you really don't want to because you're holding them in your heart or you're holding resentment or anger in your heart towards them, then this is definitely for you because we want to get free today. We want to be able to go wherever we want to go and do whatever we want to do, having a certain sense of peace and joy, and ability to engage with our surroundings without anxiety and nervousness. This is for you if you are not sure of the difference between forgiveness and trust. Um, so when we look at forgiveness, we'll look at the definition here of forgiveness in a moment. But forgiveness is different from putting your trust in someone. Forgiveness is absolving that person of the debt they owe you. Okay, so um, this is for you if you wanna know the difference and if you want to be able to function and operate based on that difference. This is for you if you want to be forgiven or you want to forgive yourself. So a lot of us don't realize that we are holding ourselves against ourselves, and we don't know how to forgive people, and we don't know how to forgive ourselves. And so we'll get a chance to sort of talk about a few things as it pertains to being forgiven and forgiving ourselves as well. This is for you if you want better relationships. And that is the overall premise and objective of our relationships series, to have better relationships, to have quality relationships with ourselves, with God, with our parents, with our friends, with our coworkers, with our colleagues, or, or if we're in teams or groups or what have you, right? Just to have better relationships overall. And so this is for you if that's you. All right, let's look at the definition here. Very basic definition, and I like to keep it very simple, just so that we can get a sense of, we can also sort of get on the same page and get a sense of what we're talking about. Okay, so forgiveness is a choice, and I love that. Just keep that in mind. Hold that really, really close to your heart. Forgiveness is a choice to stop feeling angry or resentful towards someone. It can also be a thing, an institution, for an offense or a mistake. So something that's been done that you felt offended by, or that has hurt you in some way. So it is a choice, and it does find itself grounded in our feelings, our emotional space. So there's an intellectual aspect to this. There's a decisiveness, right? And then there's an emotional aspect to it as well. The biblical definition is more more ingrained, I guess. Um, to release uh, any or all debt repayment due to iniquity, transgression. These are all and sin. These are all very old school words, King James words, from back in the day. So I just put there the English translation that you may be more familiar with. Lawlessness, um, a transgression meaning to trespass, and anybody knows, you see the signs that says don't don't trust don't trespass here against people, sorry, over people's property and whatnot. Or sin means to miss the mark. So if you're aiming to do something, aiming to go for something, and you miss it, that would be considered sin. And these are all, of course, grounded in biblical beliefs. Okay, so that is where we land today. This is what we'll be talking about: forgiveness. Okay. All right. So let's talk about why it's so hard. Why it's so hard to forgive. Now, this is based on my presumption, based on my experience. Okay. I presume it's hard for others because it's hard for me. So I guess the question that I have for you is it hard for you? Is it hard for you to forgive? Because I mean, I find it difficult. Um, and so I think it's hard uh, for a few different reasons. Um, and one of them, or the first one, is that we have no training or modeling. Not none, like zero, but it's not as prevalent as we say have training in um, um, I don't know, how to dance, for music videos. Like, there's a lot of images on in the media and, wherever we go that teach us how to, I don't know, do our makeup or dress trendy or listen to the right music or whatever the case might be. We get a lot of messaging about how we ought to be in the world, how we should be if we want to fit in with the certain crowds, the artsy crowds, the creatives, or the athletic crowd, the sporty people, whatever the case is. We get a lot of modeling and training for how to fit into different groups. Um, and based on our presentation, our clothing choices, our way of speaking, and so on. But I don't find we get a lot of training or modeling in forgiveness, right? And I grew up in a family where a lot of things were swept under the rug. And in a traditional West African Caribbean household, I'm first generation Western world, so to speak. Um, and so there was an expectation that as a child, I wouldn't speak up or I wouldn't talk back. I wouldn't necessarily ask questions. There would be no pushback. And so when there were breaches or when there were hurts or when there were pains or injustices, whether I thought they were injustice or unfair or what have you, I wasn't really allowed to voice my opinion freely. And so a lot of times, those hurts or those breaches really got kind of swept away. They got ignored or denied, and there was no um, sort of way that I learned to speak up, um, to express myself, to resolve, some of what was going on, and then to forgive. So it was kind of just expected that I move on, just brush it off, move on, soldier it out, what have you. But what I found growing up is that a lot of that stuff stayed with me. It really did, and it colored the way that I interacted with people that hurt me, and then it also shaped the way that I understood relationships to be, right? The joy and the beauty and the freedom that I can enjoy that I have in relationship now wasn't something that I had before, right? It wasn't even something that I knew existed before before. And so I don't think that we do a great job as a society, really, to train and model in this particular fundamental area of healthy relationship building. This is a fundamental foundational block in relationship building. And so I don't find that we get training in how to do it, or we get a good model for how to do it. When I was a child going to school, and somebody would there might be name calling or what have you on the playground, it would be like, Timmy, apologize to Susie, and it would be like, fine, sorry, and that was it. Right, that was like the extent of it, and hug it out kind of thing, and that was supposed to be enough. So, anyway, I just don't find that we've had um, enough training and modeling. So I think that's part of the reason why it's hard. Um, we just don't know. We just don't know how to do it well. Another reason why I think it's hard is because there's no going back. We can't unhappen the thing that we are supposed to forgive. So we can't go back in time. The thing happened, we were hurt or we were betrayed, we were lied to, whatever took place. Um, and that thing still remains. There's no way to take it away. And so it's hard now to move into forgiveness because we have to absolve the person of what we think they deserve now because they hurt us. So I think that's hard for us as human beings because we're kind of instinctive, kind of reflexive in a certain way. Like you hurt me, I hurt you, eye for an eye. We're ready to sort of get retribution or vengeance of some sort. And it's just unfair otherwise. Like, why do I get hurt and you don't get hurt, right? So I think that makes it hard as well. Um, uh, Yes, thank you so much for sharing, Becky, in the chat. Um, I think it's also hard because it doesn't fix the problem or the issue that's present. And so if there is some kind of betrayal, if there's some kind of hurt, um, forgiveness doesn't fix it. It's still there. It still has to be resolved. But forgiveness does give us opportunity. It gives us a platform to move forward into what we might call resolving or fixing the issue. I think it's also hard because it takes a lot of time and energy. Forgiveness takes a lot of time and a lot of energy. Um, it's not a one-time thing. It's not one and done. Snap our fingers, you're forgiven, and we're good to go. It is an ongoing, everyday thing, and I believe it happens um, in small increments for the rest of our lives. And it's because sometimes we don't actually know what we're going to have to forgive based on what we are experiencing now. And so if we say are in a friendship and we had plans, we had dreams, and I actually did this. I used to write letters with my best friend, and we used to dream of we'd have a double wedding, and we were gonna have our kids together, and we are gonna be each other's kids as godmothers and all the things. Um, and then time passes, and based on what happens, there may be a need to forgive again when we encounter a situation that we had thought we were going to experience with that person. And that person, because of whatever choices they made, hurt us by leaving us or abandoning us or rejecting us, or being mean, whatever the case might be. Um, and so at some point in time, it may come up again, and we might feel that stirred up anger and upset and resentment again. And oh, it was supposed to be like this, and it's not. And so we may need to, conjure up our forgiveness muscles, and rebuild our forgiveness muscles again. Sorry, engage our forgiveness muscles, and forgive again. And so, things may come up, and that does take time, and it does take energy to consistently, be in a position where we are releasing, we are letting go. Um, and then I think lastly, it's a vulnerable and honest place to be, and that's raw. It's exposed, right? When we have to forgive, I think just being vulnerable is hard. It is challenging, and being honest about the fact that we were hurt and we were affected adversely by what this person chose to do, or whatever took place, whatever happened, and that's a vulnerable place to be in. That's hard. And so those are some reasons why I think it's hard to forgive. It doesn't mean it can't get easier, right? The more we do it is the easier. More we do something, more practice we get at something is the better that we get. So I think, I don't know if those resonate with you. We can sort of throw it in the chat, and we'll see. Um, yeah, absolutely, absolutely, Becky. Yeah, for sure. See, just agreeing there. Some solidarity there as well. Here's some myths about forgiveness that I'd like to touch on. Um, because what we believe shapes what we choose to do, right? And so if we think a certain way, we are going to then feel a certain way, and then act out or make decisions and choices based on that way. And so some myths based on what I've heard about the act of forgiveness or the choice to forgive is that we have to forgive and forget. That's impossible, guys. Come on. Like, we can't forget, because we're humans, and we have, unless there's some kind of injury to the brain, and maybe you're concussed and need to go to the doctor, but you can't forget. I get the premise, right? Forgive and then act like you've forgotten. And I personally think that's a myth because, one, we can't forget, and two, there are some ways in which we need to put um, extra measures in place after a breach of some sort has taken place, or a relationship break has taken place, meaning there's some kind of conflict that requires forgiveness. And so I don't think we can forget, and I don't think we ought to forget. Another myth is that there was nothing wrong. Um, Everything's wrong, okay? Everything was wrong. Um, so when we think about, and let me qualify this. Basically, when we are asked to forgive, it means that the thing that was done to us was okay. That's the myth. So that is untrue. The thing that was done was still wrong. The forgiveness doesn't absolve the thing of being wrong or absolve the person of having done wrong. Okay. And so we have to understand that forgiveness is outside of the realm of determining what is right and wrong. Um, and so forgiveness is its own thing. Okay. It doesn't qualify or disqualify the behavior, the action, the choice, or whatever was taking place as it pertains to you. Um, we have to be friends. So that's another myth. If you forgive the person, that you guys have to be, in cahoots once again. And I had a pastor when I was growing up, and he said, "Well, I can forgive you. It doesn't mean we have to have tea." And that's so true. And you can have tea if you so choose, but it doesn't mean that. And so we have to learn how to walk out this forgiveness journey, and really do so with our objectives in mind about the relationship and its context, and with our safety in mind as well. Um, Forgiveness, another myth about forgiveness is that nobody is to blame. And so if we forgive, then nobody gets to take on the responsibility of the thing that happened. And that's not true either. We are responsible for our role, for what we've done, for what we've said. But forgiveness, again, it's an outside entity. It does not determine, it does not qualify, it does not define, or label what has taken place in the conflict, or the dynamic between individuals or institutions or what have you, wronged or righted parties. Um, Another myth about forgiveness is that it's guaranteed. So if you apologize, then the forgiveness is guaranteed. That's only with God. Okay. So not with humans, unfortunately. That's not how it works. We cannot beg or ask or plead. Well, we can, but we can't guarantee that the other person is going to acquiesce and say, "Yes, I forgive you." Right? We can say, "Please forgive me," but even then, it's not a guarantee that we're going to receive forgiveness. It's okay when people, stand in their unforgiveness, right? It's up to them. This time is for us to talk about why it might be helpful and beneficial for us to move into forgiveness and to walk out of unforgiveness. But again, it's up to people. It's their choice, right? And then another myth about forgiveness is that one time is enough. And we've chatted a little bit about that just now, in reference to the ongoing nature of things that may come up that we do need to re-forgive for. Right. And so each day, it might be something else that comes up. Well, okay, I have to forgive this person again. I have to forgive this person again. I have to forgive this again. I have to forgive it again. Forgive it again and again and again. Um, and that can be quite challenging. Um, but the alternative is certainly not uh, the better of the two options. All right. So if you guys have other myths that maybe you guys thought about, maybe you guys believed about forgiveness, that you may still believe, um, throw those in the chat. Share them with us. Um, I think one of the things that I just thought of was that um, accept we don't have to accept future, like, possibilities of being treated badly. Um, like, we can forgive from our position now, but because we don't have to be friends, like, we don't actually have to move back into a place where we'll have to continuously forgive this person for the same or similar treatment. It's all right to distance ourselves. So yeah, I'm thinking about, just in terms of um ongoing forgiveness there. All right, some quotes for us, that you guys can comment on, if they resonate with you. "Today I decided to forgive you." I love this. "Not because you apologized or because you acknowledged the pain that you caused me, but because my soul deserves peace." Whoa! Like, peace, priceless. A priceless gift. "And because my soul deserves peace, I am going to move into a place where I forgive you." And I love that because it's such a personal choice, but it's also recognizing the personal benefit of making that choice. And that's what forgiveness offers us. Okay. Um, "I never knew how strong I was until I had to forgive someone who wasn't sorry and accept an apology I never received." Oh my goodness. And this speaks to what is required for the forgiveness process to take place? It requires strength. That is the reality. And this is why a lot of us are stuck in unforgiveness, because most of the time, we'll lean towards the easy way out, the bare minimum and whatnot. And then, there's a percentage of us that live, in excellence above average lifestyles, that will always do the right thing, always do the hard thing and so on. And I'm not there for sure. But it does require strength. It requires strength to be able to forgive, especially when people don't apologize to us, when they go off and do their own things, or they don't even realize that they've hurt us, and we are not in a position to express to them that they've hurt us or what have you. Um, and so really, really great quote here. To do the work ourselves, to free ourselves and to access peace for ourselves, right? And I love the last part that says, accept an apology I never received, right? Just on our own, just hey, I'm going to assume, I'm going to pretend, I'm going to act like you apologized or whatever the case might be. And I'm going to forgive you. I'm going to forgive that person. I'm going to release them from my heart, my mind, my innards, and let them go. Let them go, and everything that came along with them. The burden of anger or resentment or any kind of unpleasant, heavy, painful, emotional experiences. Releasing that offers us the gift, gives us the opportunity to be free, and to enjoy um, peace of mind and well-being. Love that quote. You'll never know how strong your heart is until you learn to forgive who broke it. My goodness. Yeah. Yeah. That's a big one. I think for a lot of individuals who have felt wronged, especially by parents, I've heard that a lot. And then in romantic relationships, when there is separation, or when there is um, a break of some sort, when you decide to go your separate ways, there are amicable partings, but a lot of times there's like vile language and just hurtful, sort of mean treatment of one another, really, cruel behavioral patterns that are really difficult to contend with, to understand, um, and really to make sense of as we move forward in our lives. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the impact, when it comes to our self-esteem and our ways of thinking in a moment. But just thinking about that, and who we've decided to love, to pour ourselves into, to support, to cherish, only to have that unravel, and then if you maybe may have been treated really badly in all of that, um, and then wondering and questioning about what all this means, how you make sense of that in the end, but turning around and requiring yourself to stand in strength and courage, and to release that person, to let that person go, to absolve that person, um, of the need for you to exercise revenge on them, for you to hurt them the way they hurt you. That is strength and maturity as well. Um, and you'll never know how strong your heart is until you learn to forgive who broke it. What a powerful statement. Um, that's there. All right. We'll do some quotes or some stats, and see. I actually like these stats. So older people in their 70s and 80s, because old is, older, not old. Okay. In their 70s and 80s are much more forgiving than young and middle-aged adults. I don't know. I don't know, maybe it's just the proximity to death. Maybe maybe it's just maturity and having lived long lives and recognizing what's important, or what's most valued or what's valuable. I don't know. There could be a lot of reasons for that. You guys can throw maybe your ideas in the chat. Um, yes, growing wiser with age for sure. Um, but yeah, I think that's interesting. I don't want to get old and gray till, and wait till then to forgive people and enjoy the level of peace, that I can enjoy now. So yeah, leaning into it now, but for sure there's wisdom and maturity that comes with age. Um, People who believe in the divine or in divine forgiveness have higher mental health. Divine forgiveness would be like forgiveness from God. And so if you subscribe to a higher power, belief system that is sacred, I believe in Jesus Christ. And so we recognize that forgiveness comes through the blood of Jesus and sacrifice of Jesus on the cross. And people that genuinely sort of lean into some, and it didn't specify. So anybody that's subscribed to some kind of sacred text or religious or faith-based belief system found it was found that they experience better mental health than sort of the average population. And then approximately 52% of the population actively pursues forgiveness consistently. That is just above half. So there's almost half of us that are walking around holding the heaviness of unforgiveness in our lives, and that is affecting and impacting the way that we think, our mental health, our emotional health, our relational health, our spiritual health. It's affecting us, and our physical health as well. Yeah. So, yeah, I know. Interesting, eh? I always find, just reading studies, research studies, and journal articles about the topics, to be so fascinating because there are so many studies that are done, on these topics, on these components and elements of relationship, and a lot of things maybe don't necessarily make it mainstream. Nobody's listening to the results of of psychological research studies or sociological research studies on the news or on the radio or what have you. It might not be interesting, or maybe not as interesting as, I don't know, Jada and Will Smith news or celebrity gossip or what have you. But I find them fascinating. I really do, because it's so interesting to note how, over time, hundreds and hundreds of years, some of these discoveries and some of these um, sort of notable facts and so on haven't changed. Like, they've done research studies over time that have had the same results, and um, they've been consistent, over different demographics, different age groups, and so on. And that just says something. It says that we're more similar and same than we are different. And evolution, helps us to recognize what has been helpful for us. So there's certain ways of interacting that are most helpful for us, most beneficial for us to maintain proximity and maintain intimate connection, over other things, right? There's certain ways of behaving, certain things that we do that are most helpful for us to maintain survival, and to ensure that we get our basic necessity, our needs are met, and so on. So anyway, I find it absolutely fascinating that we can, we can do all of that, and we can get the studies, and we can learn more on how to do this relationship thing well. So, those are some cool stats that I love to share, and hopefully they're interesting for you. Um, I don't know if you guys sort of experience similar things in your homes or what have you, where there hasn't been or has been. Maybe you've gotten a really great model of forgiveness. You can for sure share that. I would love to hear that. And get a contrasting view of maybe my own experience. Okay, so benefits of benefits. I love this little this little graphic here. Forgive others as quickly as you expect God to forgive you. Some of the benefits of forgiveness. So forgiveness can lead to you being forgiven. And so, for those of us who are people of faith, we do believe that if we forgive others, then God forgives us. And so it's a reciprocal sort of flow thing, right? And if we don't forgive others, then God doesn't forgive us. We're holding unforgiveness in our heart, right? We're holding up our own forgiveness as well. But if we forgive others, forgiveness can lead to better relationships, um, better emotional health, right? So less anxiety, less stress, less feelings of hostility, anger, resentment, and so on. It can lead to better physical health, right? So fewer symptoms of depression or high blood pressure, high cholesterol, all these sort of ailments that we sometimes attribute to aging. Um, and even just sort of diet or environment, some of them are actually caused by or brought on by and instigated and fueled by our lack of forgiveness. We're holding on and harboring um, anger and upset and resentment and all these really heavy emotions that do things in our bodies, right? There are physiological effects to our emotional experiences. And so when our bodies get flooded with cortisol or with adrenaline, that affects our organs, it affects our immune system, it affects our nervous system, it affects our brains, and so all of that amounts to emotional experience, of course, based on our interaction and engagement with the world, and how we hold things. But at the end of the day, it still takes a toll on our mental, physical, emotional health, and part of that, of course, is um, our self-esteem, the way that we think about ourselves, the way that we speak to ourselves, the way that we treat ourselves. A lot of the things that we do are actually very self-harming, and we don't realize, or we just don't call it self-harm. We sit down, this past couple of weeks, I was scrolling on social media, and for those of you who know me, I don't scroll on social media. That's not a thing. But what I realized what it was that it was a way of me harming myself. It was actually self-sabotage because I didn't I chose to do that instead of doing the thing that I knew I wanted to do and could do, had the capacity to do. But there was something there. Some people might call it procrastination, but I call it what it is. I think it's self-harm in a certain way, because we harm our abilities or sabotage our ability to be our best selves, to grow into our best selves. Sometimes we harm ourselves in different ways. We might eat all the ice cream out of the ice cream bin, and it might taste good in the moment, and we might be drowning away our sorrows, or we just went through something, lost a job, or whatever the case might be. But we're actually harming ourselves, we're harming our bodies, we're harming our internal organs, our systems, and all of that takes a toll at the end of the day. So I digress. But one of the benefits, or some more of the benefits of forgiving and releasing and letting go, um, really impacts the way that we see ourselves, and then the way that we treat ourselves, the way that we take care of ourselves, and ultimately, um, it improves our heart health and our bodily health and our self-esteem, our mind health, and all those things as well. So there are plenty of benefits on many levels to forgiving, to releasing, and to letting go. All right, let's continue. Okay, so this is my favorite slide. I think forgiveness is weird, and I'm just going to be completely honest. I love it. I love the idea of forgiveness, and I wouldn't be obviously where I am without it for sure, especially as a person of faith. But I think it's weird, and I say it's weird because it happens. Uh, no, I'll say it like this: it's for you, okay? Forgiveness is for us as individuals. We're doing the forgiving, and it's for us, but it's for them too. Like they get to benefit from our forgiveness, like the person or the institution or the thing. Like the culprit gets off scot free. Like why do they get something like a reward for like hurting us or for causing us pain or for like harming us in some way. It's like we're it's like we're letting the thing or the person who hurt us, like, they get off the hook, and they like, shouldn't they also suffer and be humiliated? I don't know. Like, part of me is like, it is for me because I get to be released and enjoy peace again and get to get rid of all those heavy emotions and so on, and there's a pleasure in that, there's freedom in that, right? But then it's also for them, like, they also get something out of this deal. So, anyway, I find that weird. I don't know if you guys find that weird. You may not find that weird, but I find it weird. Um, I find it's also emotional, and it feels wrong, right? So like if I need to forgive, it's because someone has done something to me or I feel wronged in some way. um so I'm hurt and I'm angry, and unforgiveness actually seems to be the logical choice for me to choose because I want to hold on to my hurt and anger until you say sorry or you do something to make up for whatever you did for me. um But on some level, it's like I'm feeling all these emotions, and the releasing of those emotions are actually going to be most beneficial for me, and that requires forgiveness. But that just feels wrong in the moment. It feels like I want you to be hurting just like me, and you deserve it because, if you think about it, like, you betrayed me. And if I continue to think about it, it's going to stir up all those emotions again. And I want revenge because there's been an injustice. There needs to be justice. Right. But it's weird. I don't know. To me, it's weird because it feels wrong, but it's so right at the same time. Like to release those emotions and to let ourselves go free. So anyway, I find that weird. And then it's sacrificial and courageous. I think forgiving others is a courageous act. I think it does require a lot of strength. It really means we take the higher road, be the bigger person kind of thing. And we do get to free ourselves from all of that bitterness and anger and so on. And that at the end of the day only makes matters worse. So it is sacrificial. We are doing something, but it's also courageous. So I think it's weird on a lot of levels. I don't know. You guys can throw your comments in the chat if you guys think it's weird too. Um, yeah, it feels like you're easy, like a pushover. Yeah, kind of like that. It's like, uh. But then I think of like Jesus, and I think, man, like he was like, yeah, you guys aren't taking my life. I'm laying it down. Like, what? Yeah, it's a different it's a mind shift thing that takes place. Um, okay, so let's look at 4 steps. We'll look at 4 steps, and then we'll begin to wrap up here. 4 steps, this is the art part, tips and tricks on how to forgive, and then we'll look at, a few sort of practical steps, okay? I believe forgiveness really only happens when God is a part of the equation. And so for people of faith, we recognize that this is filtered through the word. So responsibility is one um, aspect or pillar of forgiveness, right? And so when we can admit or confess or see or be aware of the role that we played in the equation, even if it was just being present, or allowing ourselves or listening or retaliating or uh, exacerbating the situation, making, I don't know, comments that cause the situation to escalate, whatever the case might, or maybe it could have been withholding. It could have been being very dismissive or minimizing. It could have been a lot of things, right? That takes effort um, to reflect on and to be introspective and also to be honest, right? So taking responsibility for the role that you played is part of forgiveness, and gets you there faster, by the way. So it is hard. It's hard to sort of peel back the layers and be like, what did I do? What happened here? Like, what was the role that I played in all of this? But it gets you to forgiveness more quickly. So taking responsibility, remorse, right? So using the feeling of remorse, like not remorse because maybe you did something wrong, maybe you did, maybe you didn't, I don't know, but remorse, as in feeling badly about what is taking place in the context of that relationship. Okay, so if you feel badly, like, oh my goodness, and if you don't care, well, that's a whole nother story, and perhaps we need to be having a different conversation. But if you do care and you do want to have a better relationship or repair the relationship, then a sense of regret or remorse or sadness about what is happening, the relationship break, is certainly necessary, right? And so you're able to see both sides. You're able to see them, you're able to see yourself. Restoration, you have to desire restoration and move towards it. And amends, I put, you make amends. Amends is not a word that we use um, sort of in mainstream society, but it is a common word in recovery circles. So making amends means that you approach the other person based on your understanding of your contribution to the situation, not in you don't approach the other person in a way that requires or requests for them to apologize to you. You go and you model what it is that you want to see happen in the relationship. So making amends is, hey, I recognize that this is what I did, what happened, this is how I contributed to it. It sucks that we're here. I really don't want for us to continue along these lines. Um, and I'd like to move towards repair, reconnection within our relationship, right? And so making amends is recognizing your responsibility, recognizing your role, what you contributed, taking responsibility, and then letting the other person know, like, hey, you didn't deserve what I did. You didn't deserve, maybe I called you a name or whatever the case might be, right? And so being willing to move towards restoration yourself is all part of the forgiveness process. And then renewal. Renewal is after the fact. So when all is said and done, you want to learn from the experience and you want to grow as a person. And that requires for us to establish new boundaries, for us to sort of renegotiate how we're going to be in relationship with the other person. And that means, hey, we have to see what just happened, and we have to um, make you know m- make the necessary changes in order for us to avoid that happening again and again and again and again and again. Old habits do die hard, and so obviously, the first time is probably not going to be the last time behavioral, if it's a behavior or a habit that you've been doing for a long time. Maybe you're notoriously late and you don't text to say, "Hey, I'm running late," but that's really really offensive to your boss or your manager. So you have to learn how to do that. It may not happen right away, but you got to do that because you might lose your job. So it's really just recognizing, where you can, begin to improve and establish, new habits, new ways of being, new boundaries that will help for, building, that healthy relationship that you wanna build with that other person. All right, here's some practical steps. And this I have worksheets for all of these steps. So if you want them, throw your email in the chat and I will send them out to you. Write down the hurts, right? And so you want to inventory your process. Write down everything. Write it down. I know it sounds weird. What are we? What are we? Kids with diaries? No, we're not kids with diaries. Perhaps we're elderly, older folks with journals, but there's something to be said about writing things down. And when you write down your hurts, you're able to see them in plain sight. They don't take up too much mental uh, real estate. And it's an opportunity um, for you to see what you're actually going through. And then it helps you to inventory the process. Inventorying the process means really acknowledging your thoughts, your feelings, your internal vows, your actions, your beliefs about the world that were shaped or formed or changed in that particular hurt. Um, and One of the things that you can note, especially when it comes to like inventorying, is that the always and never statements, those are really, really, really big. So if, and I'm trying to think of one that maybe I've been through. Um, if you have been in perhaps a romantic relationship, and this I'll speak about myself, and that person treats you a certain way, if there's been abuse, whether it's verbal abuse or emotional abuse or physical abuse or financial abuse or something like that. Um, and for me, when it comes to finances, I'm pretty particular. So if there's been any kind of financial abuse, you might say something like, "Oh, I'm never going to share my finances with anybody ever again. I'm never going to tell the truth about my finances. I'm never going to share them. I'm never going to share a bank account or whatever the case might be." Well, that actually um, that's kind of a hindrance on you for when you do find yourself in another relationship, and there's opportunities for investment or collaboration or whatever the case might be, right? You're holding on and holding yourself back because you've made this internal vow based on this past hurtful experience. That's when you hear the always and the nevers, you're like, I'm never going to do that again. I'm always going to make sure that I'm at the top of my game, at the head of the pack. I'm always going to make sure, those kinds of statements are usually born out of like humiliation or injustice or hurt or rejection or some place of pain, really, that requires forgiveness. And so inventorying, writing things down, can help you identify, those internal vows that might be actually tripping you up and hindering you at this point in your life from really flourishing or maximizing your potential, or engaging in certain kinds of connections and relationships, or taking chances and risks on certain things in certain areas, right? So you want to inventory your process, and then you want to choose to release. Part of my process involves prayer, and really releasing that person to the Lord. Um, but you can choose to release that person. I heard, you know, the little Disney princess say, "Let it go." So if you're into Disney, take her advice. Um, I don't remember her name, Prophet Elsie, Elsa, whatever her name is. Um, but choose to release, right? And so it's a choice. It's a cognitive experience. You have to choose, and you have to do so with your thoughts. Um, and that's hilarious. Thanks for the comments in the chats, guys. And then renegotiate future terms. And again, when we're looking at maybe I'll go back to inventorying your process until we get to renegotiating. So when you inventory, you want to acknowledge the different layers. You want to acknowledge the emotions, right? Um you want to list, like, what's the harm that's been done to me. You want to list it out and really be specific about it. You want to recognize how, whatever's coming up, how the emotions and how what's been done to you is affecting your behavior, right? And so, I was hurt by a boss, who told me I couldn't get a raise, and I left that job, and I said I'm never going to work for another person again, in that industry. And what did it do? It caused you to go to another industry, and now, whatever the case is, how did it affect your behavior? How did it affect your behavioral choices, and how is it still affecting you today? Because it's likely still present. Another piece of that I like to really hone in on is, um, the grieving process, right? So grieving the things that were lost throughout the relationship breach or break. So grieving, um, the things that were lost and the future things. Like if you were in a relationship, say, and you guys break up, well, maybe you were planning on having kids by the time you were 23 or 30 or whatever the case. Now you're single, and that's not going to happen. And so grieving the loss of the relationship, but also the future losses that you had planned for, is a really important thing. So recognizing even how grief plays a role, and being able to name that during your inventory process. Okay. Okay, so choosing to forgive the offender, renegotiating future terms means, in relational terms, you want to outline and talk about, um, how you're going to live with this other person, how much you're going to share. What are the boundaries you're gonna place, even if you're gonna continue in relationship with this person, right? So you have to make decisions about what the future is going to look like based on this interaction, and based on the hurt that's taken place, and based on your forgiveness process. And so you want to have clear sorry, you want to have clear boundaries, and then you want to restrict access based on what you feel is, or what you determine to be, um, appropriate. Okay, so if this person, is physically abusive towards you, yeah, you may not want to continue to be in their physical presence if possible, right? And so you want to renegotiate some of those terms based on, um, what you determine to be appropriate and safe for you. And then you wanna keep it up forever, and I wanna stress that word forever. Um, our minds are powerful things, and we can revisit, thoughts and stories and ideas and incidences and events and memories, and we can just stir ourselves up and get ourselves into a frenzy, and to the point where, it's like it happened yesterday when it happened 10 years ago. And so we want to keep up this exercise of forgiveness daily, uh, applying a pressure to this muscle. We forgive, we release, we let go. It doesn't mean we'll never get over it or whatever the case might be. It just means that we are taking the necessary precautions to keep that muscle strong, so that we don't revert back or revisit, past hurts in ways that are unhelpful. But we can go back and we can re-narrate or re-story what has taken place in the past. So we want to keep that up forever. And then, when in doubt, if that becomes difficult, we got to seek some outside support. So find a support group or see a counselor. If if something is taking place um, that is really um, like a block. It's like a real obstacle to you moving forward and sort of thriving and achieving peace. Find a support group or see a counselor, right? Because forgiveness is a lifelong commitment. And if you find yourself in a cycle, revisiting and really upset and really angry, and there's trauma and there's a lot there, then reach out for some external resources that will help you. All right. And we'll close on that for today, as it pertains to forgiveness. Um, Again, I always challenge you guys to act based on what you've heard. Throw your takeaways in the chat. Whatever sort of stood out for you, spoke to you. I will challenge you to apply it, to change something about yourself, and then to teach somebody else something that you've learned or something that you've taken away. Maybe it's the person that you need to forgive. Maybe it's the person that you want to forgive you. Um, but yeah, apply it, change something, teach someone about it, and then pick one thing again to act on this week and script it. That means write it out, write down those hurts, inventory it, and I'll send out those worksheets to those of you who would like it, who put your email address in the chat. And the Mentiverse app, it is there. First season is of the relationship series is there. The second season will go up after next week. Next week is the last episode of the second season. So that will be in the Mentiverse app, available on Google and on in the Apple Store. And then next week, last episode of relationship series season 2, we will be talking about relationship DNA. We're going to come out and find out how to properly establish and build relationships from the beginning to end for maximized or maximum results. So we're going to learn how to uproot some of the seeds that we've already planted that are bearing some of the unwanted fruit that we're experiencing in our relationships. Sometimes we do silent treatment stuff. I think that's a really big one. And when we plant that seed, there's no telling where that goes. Withdrawal is another big one, where we like cross our hands and we like withdraw internally, or we walk away physically. That's another big one that we plant really, really early. We do the power struggle thing. So we're going to learn how to how to reverse some of the effects of those, but also how to start to finish relationship, how to do relationships well, based on attachment, and then we'll look at how to include some of that more helpful responses and behaviors and words and ideas and perspectives and expectations and so on that you do want to be a part of your relationship, and that produce good fruit instead of producing pain. Okay, so that will be our relationship DNA last episode next week. So join us. It will be a lot of fun. And I'm going to stop the recording, and we can chat. If you guys have comments, you can for sure, of course, throw your hand up, and ask a question or give a comment or share something from your experience. Thank you guys so much for being here again today during relationship series second season. I don't know what episode this was. I think this is episode number 8 or 7. Bless you guys. See you next week.